more difficult. Matter of fact, I don't even advocate that. But if you're willing and want to get out of the system, why don't we just give you the right to write it off your taxes? Take your tax credit, get all your money back, but just get control of that money and the control of your medical care. But in my proposal to cut $1 trillion, the priorities are that a big hunk of this comes from overseas. And it's in the DOD budget. And they say, you would cut defense to do this. No, I'm not going to cut defense at all. This is military expenditures. It's not defending our country. Why are we defending the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan, forgetting our border between the United States and Mexico? I would say bring the troops home and take care of ourselves here and forget about all these wars. My proposal is taking the military budget down to $500 billion. That is still a lot. It's still way over everybody's budget, way over China's budget. And we could do that and still have more weapons. We have more weapons now today. We could blow up the world 25 times. You know, and we don't need more weapons. We need more common sense is what we need. But our presence in all these foreign countries stirs up more animosity and less security for us. We're in probably 150 countries. We have 900 bases. We now have 7,000 drone stations where we can bomb any postage stamp in the world, and we do it. And guess what? There's some bad people out there, but when we pretend that we are going to resolve all these conflicts by pinpointing and killing this person, that person, guess what? A lot of other people get killed too. And I have a rule that I would like to invoke and apply an old rule to our foreign policy. And I think that is a golden rule. We shouldn't ever do anything to anybody else that we don't want them to do to us as a sovereign. It means the troops would come home from every place. I mean, why should we subsidize Germany and Japan and South Korea and get involved in all these wars? It's actually getting a lot worse. We've been doing this for a long time. When I was drafted in the 60s, it was all over Vietnam. We didn't have a declaration in Korea. We've never declared a war since World War II. So on occasion, generally the presidents would go to the Congress and say, this is what we're going to do. They would lie to the Congress, you know, the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. That never happened. Yet it's 58, 60,000 Americans were killed over there, and then we had to leave. And also, we didn't hear the whole story about Iraq. Iraq had nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. Iraq had no nuclear weapons, no weapons of mass destruction. Yet and going into Afghanistan and nation building, we've lost 8,500 Americans. We have 40,000 severely wounded veterans coming home, hundreds of thousands begging and pleading for help from the Veterans Administration. It's costly, and it's not doing much for diminishing the threat, because the more people we kill overseas, the more danger that we're in. And to think, well, there's 200, 300, 400 really bad people out there. If we just kill them, it's going to be over. No, too many accidental killings, and every time you kill anybody, there's going to be family members and others that will be dedicated to attacking us. So this whole idea of this foreign policy, we have this idea of our foreign policy has to be based on American exceptionalism. Well, you know, that's a mixed term. I think of America as being once very exceptional, the freest and the most prosperous, and set a standard. But I believe that we should set an example, be the freest and be the most prosperous, and defend the civil liberties of all our citizens, so others would want to be like us and emulate us. But now the idea of exceptionalism is we are the superpower. We have the responsibility to settle every dispute, every border, and it is up to us, because if we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So we have this moral obligation to do it. But by force, you know, we have a foreign policy that says that we're to go to all the countries, all the third world. Now we're marching into Africa right now. Now we're in Uganda. And we go and we say, okay, we want you to be on our side. We want you to be our friendly dictator. Will you do what we tell you? Okay, sure, send me money. But if that individual doesn't want to become our puppet dictator, then we kill him or bomb him. Now, I would say, why don't we offer what the Founding Fathers said, what the Constitution tells us? We have an obligation, and wisdom would tell us that we ought to try to be friends with those who want to be friends, trade with people that we want to trade with, try to get along with people. I remember vividly the Korean War when one of my teachers was sent over to Korea and didn't come back. And it was a terrible period to live in. We lost so many. But now, Nixon, one thing Nixon did, I can complain a lot of what Nixon did I didn't like, but he said, why don't we talk to them? You know, even when they were run by the communists, just as Reagan did when he talked to the Russian communists. And they were bad people. We talked to them. But we're, even with the shortcomings with our relationship with China right now, it's a lot better than fighting and killing each other. So in Vietnam, we lose 60,000. That we were told if we didn't do that, there would be a domino effect. The whole region would go communist. Well, guess what? We have become more socialist, more welfare and bankrupt, and that whole region is more capitalistic. Vietnam, our friends, we trade with them. Presidents go back and forth. The president of Vietnam has been here. So I would say so much more has been achieved in peace than with war. So I just think this whole idea of foreign policy has to change. And the founders were very clear on this. That the farewell speech by Washington was just fantastic about advising us to stay out of entangling lines, mind our own business, try to have peace and trade with people. Far from a perfect world, but I'll tell you what, I think foreign policy is wrong. But I don't think much more of our domestic policy. I mean, it is based on spending and interference, whether it's on economics, but our personal liberties are under attack every single day, especially once a war is declared. We have a declared war. We don't know exactly who the enemy is, but we're in a state of perpetual war with every country in the world because we're at war against terrorism. Terrorism happens to be a tactic. That's like saying we have declared war against criminality. And therefore, anytime we see a criminal that might attack us someday, we're supposed to go get them. So we have this attack, and we've made this declaration. Under those conditions, we're all supposed to be very humble and obedient, because when our civil liberties are abused, we're not supposed to say anything because we're in a time of war. And certainly this has happened tremendously so since 9/11. And all you have to do is fly on an airplane, and you ought to. If you can fly on an airplane and not feel abused, then I would suggest that pay more attention, because it's not a friendly thing to have to do. But you know, just take for instance, well, the intrusion of our privacy, you know, is just out of control. I mean, the IRS is responsible for that, but there's another war that goes on. It's called a war, but it's a war against us. And that's this drug war that's going on. That is the excuse of all excuses to do anything they want to us in this country. I think that has to change, because it hasn't done a bit of good in stopping people from using drugs.